Good morning, happy Tuesday. Get ready with me while we try some of our new Ipsy products and some of our new Marshall products. So, we just got back from my mom's visiting this weekend, and the one question I get asked a lot is why my son doesn't live with me. So, I guess this morning let's do a story time. Yes, the story starts back in 2010 when I got my nursing license. So, I got my nursing license, and my first job was at the prison. So let me start off by saying the girl that I was back then and the girl that I am today are two different people. Like the girl that I was back then was 300 plus pounds, zero self worth, was the biggest people pleaser you will ever meet in your entire life. Um, I wanted someone to love me because I had no love for myself whatsoever. And so I started at the prison as a nurse, as a new nurse. And like, if you've ever worked at the prison, it's a different kind of nursing than like the nursing you would have at a nursing home. You just don't get to show the same kind of attention. So I worked at the prison for a couple years, and then I met my son's father. He happened to be locked up at the prison that I worked at. Nothing happened while I was there, nothing at all. He got out. He lived in Jackson, and he gave me a call after he got out of jail. So when I got with my ex-husband, all the people in my life that I knew warned me. They were like, "You need to be careful. This is not what you think it is." And I just kept telling everybody, like, he is so misunderstood. Like, he is so misunderstood. The only misunderstanding was with me. So I can honestly say, like, back then, all the red flags were there. I just didn't see them or didn't want to see them because, like, I was so scared of being left alone and not having anybody. And I just thought I'd found somebody that loved me and was going to be with me forever. So while we were dating, everything was actually okay. Like, it really didn't seem that bad. I remember when things turned bad was the day we got married. We got into an argument. He was being super friendly with a bunch of girls at our wedding. And it was our wedding night. And he was inviting all these people in this hotel room to like all stay like a slumber party on our wedding night. And I remember we got into an argument and he put his hands around my throat. And I remember the thought going through my head, everyone was right. What have I married? Like, what have I done? And I used to say it was like a prideful thing. Like, I couldn't go and tell anyone what had happened because I was just too prideful to say I was wrong. But I think part of it was an embarrassment thing. Not probably, I mean, it was. It was an embarrassment thing. It was an embarrassment that this whole time I was thinking everything was perfect when in reality everything was exactly what everybody said it was. He wasn't the man that I thought he was, and that they were right, and all those warnings I should have listened to. So another thing was I was raised in a Catholic home, so they didn't believe in divorce. Like, and that wasn't something somebody told me. Nobody was like, "Sarah, you cannot get divorced." In my mind, like I knew what I'd been told, and I just couldn't. So, like most people in that situation, it just got worse after that first night. I think it was almost like he saw that he got away with it. So, after that, he just wanted to see how else he could get away with it. So, a couple months later, I was super sick. I couldn't hold anything down, and I went and took a pregnancy test and found out that I was pregnant with a little baby boy. So when I found out I was pregnant, I thought that was going to answer all of our problems. Like, he wanted a little boy, I wanted a little boy. These were answered prayers from God. So now we were going to live happily ever after. And I was totally wrong. So while I was pregnant, like I said, things continued to get worse. Um, he put his hands on me more often. I found out he slept with half a Jackson. It was just kind of like not a good situation. Of course, after finding out all of this, I didn't go anywhere. I was still sticking around, thinking our marriage was going to work. We split up, And I still stayed around Jackson. Like, I kept thinking we were going to be together. We still had nowhere to go. I was staying at a extended stay establishment that I was paying for with me and a couple of his friends. And it was really just to get the chance to be around him again. It was, I think back at how I acted with my ex husband. I feel sorry for myself. I really feel sorry for myself because I really thought it was going to work out. But then one night, he came over. He said we should talk before I head back to Ripley about the baby and everything. And I got upstairs, and out of nowhere, he just started hitting me. And he hit me down a flight of stairs. I was 3 months pregnant, and it was awful. I ended up having to call a locksmith because he took my keys to my car. I called a locksmith at like 4 o'clock in the morning to come make me a key just so I could leave. I wanted away from Jackson, and I wanted away from him. So I ended up going back home to my mom's and my dad's. I drove straight in. I ended up staying at a friend's house that night and then going to my parents the next day because I didn't want to show up on their doorstep. Again, having to admit that they were 100% right about everything. So life went back to normal, kind of as I knew it. I lived with my parents for a while. I shortly after being there, I found out that my ex-husband got locked back up. He went back to prison. He got his time back. He started calling, and at first I wouldn't answer, but it wasn't very long. I started answering his phone calls again. He said all the things. He wanted to work our family out. He made him a lot of mistakes. He wished that I would forgive him, and I did because I thought he meant it. So I ended up finding out he was cheating on me while he was locked up. I had just had my son. And this time, like, I had it in my head I was not going to forgive him because he had done it to me too many times, and now you're locked up and you're doing it to me while I'm supporting you. So I just kind of started going out and doing my own thing. I let him be the one that was upset, calling, asking me to forgive him. I ended up going to get a tattoo randomly in Memphis. It was another good story time to tell. But anyways, that went on for a couple months, and then finally, like, we started talking. He was begging me to forgive him, and I finally did. I was like, maybe we can get our family to work. He was fixing to get out, and he found out he was getting an early release date. So once I found out that he was getting an early release date, I went out and found a house, and I set up like everything that needed to be set up for him to have a parole address or probation address or whatever. I remember the probation officer telling me that they didn't think he belonged there, that he didn't need to come there, and that I wasn't going to like it. He wasn't going to be easy on him. And I was like, whatever. Once again, nobody understood him. Only I did. And he was really just trying to give me a heads up before he got out. So the day he got out of prison, I went and picked him up. We went out shopping. My son was with a friend while I went and picked him up. We got to the house, and the police executed a search warrant for my house. I ended up taking some pill charges for my ex-husband. I wanted to be that ride or die for him. Like, even after everything we had been through, I just thought that I was being so loyal, and I just knew if I did this, he was going to love me. And it was the saddest situation. I remember the cops telling me they couldn't believe I was taking these charges for him. They knew that it was not me, but I was adamant I would not budge. I was not going to let him go back to prison. The day he got out, like, our son needed his father. It was a terrible situation. And then, so I ended up bonding myself out. They ended up releasing him because I took all the charges, so they had nothing to hold him on. And the second we were released, we took off. We took off to Jackson. We felt like that was a sign. We needed to get away from North Mississippi and just go and be together once again in Jackson. So at this point, like, I had dabbled in things, like I had suffered with my own addiction earlier in life, but I had gotten sober. I was completely sober. When we got down to Jackson this time, he was supposed to be sober but got super strung out, and I could not believe he was doing this with me and our son here. And my son went to visit my parents. They came, they wanted to keep him for a couple weeks while we were figuring out what we were going to do down there. And I was so angry at him that, like, after everything we've been through, I just took these charges for him, and he would not do right for us. And he got strung out really bad. And I was going to show him how stupid he looked. Like, let me show you what it looks like with you being on drugs. So, I had never been an IV user until that day. And that is when my whole world fell apart. And let me say this, while I'm not 100% proud of everything that it took to get me where I'm at, I don't regret anything, because I wouldn't be who I am had I not done the things that I've done and made the mistakes that I made. So I became super lost the next couple of months. I lost who I was. I lost family. I lost friends. I used people. I stole. I was homeless. I remember it was the weekend I was supposed to meet my parents to pick Corey back up, and I just called him and told him I couldn't come. I knew it was no place for him. I knew it was no place for anyone to be, let alone a kid, and I knew that he was being taken care of by my parents. Anyways, things got worse. Old habits came back. My ex started hitting me really bad then. And at this point, I was so lost because I had no one. I was down here in Jackson with no one. And it just got worse and worse and worse until one night my ex beat me till I was black and blue and threw me out on the streets of Jackson, which, if you're not from Jackson, they compared Jackson's crime rate with Chicago. So, yeah, they threw me on the streets at like 2 or 3 in the morning and just kind of was like, here you go. And so I was walking the streets. Did I know where I was going? No, just walking. I ended up borrowing a phone and calling my mom and telling her I wanted to come home. And of course, she told me the only way I could come home was if I went to rehab and got myself clean. So that's what I did. I walked to this homeless shelter that I had stayed at before. My mom had talked to them, got it set up for me to get on a bus. I got on a bus and I headed to Memphis, where I met my mom. I remember she walked right past me because I looked so different, because I had been so lost on everything for so long that it was just, she couldn't even recognize me. But to be honest, when I looked in the mirror, I didn't recognize me either. My parents took me to a Cracker Barrel where I ordered this huge plate of food that I didn't eat. I just moved it around on the plate and made it look like I was eating. I kept asking them if they were going to bring my son to see me, because I was like, surely they're not fixing to send me to rehab without letting me see my son. And that was the intention. My son didn't need to see me like that, though. Like, he did not need to see what his mom had become. So I ended up going to an amazing place in Arkansas that saved my life. I did 9 months there. It was inpatient, long term. I got saved. I found out who I really was. I found out who God was, and I found out who I am in Him. So once I was out, I had my ex-husband served multiple times with divorce papers. A couple of times he was locked up and he had changed facilities. Well, then he got out. And he would threaten to come get my son all the time, like threaten to just kidnap him. And that scared me so bad, knowing that he technically had just as many rights to my son as I did, because we were technically still married and he was his father. I can remember times getting phone calls from him, and he'd be in New Albany, which was like 20 minutes away from us, staying with people that I knew, which is, that's a story time too. Anyways, I have so many story times. But he would say, I'm like 20 minutes away, I want to see my kid. And I was like, you better not come here. You better not. No, don't come here. Because I knew, like I said, like it was a control thing. It had nothing to do with him wanting to be a father. He just wanted to take something from me. Because I had gotten to a point where I was not having anything to do with him. He couldn't control me. He couldn't have any leverage over me. Corey was literally the only leverage he had. In the midst of all this, I met my now husband, Josh. We ended up creating a life for ourselves in Madison. I stayed a part of Corey's life. I was steady trying to get a divorce. I ended up getting pregnant with my daughter. And up in one day, I get a phone call that my ex-husband was finally going to sign the papers. He had refused so many times, like I really just thought it was never going to happen. It was such a headache. It went on for years. We had not seen each other in years, and he would not sign divorce papers at all. The day my ex-husband signed the divorce papers, I was so excited. I knew this was it. It was time for me to get my son back and have my daughter, and I was super excited. Now, mind you, years have gone by at this point trying to fight this guy on a divorce and getting everything put together and a life that was good for my family and my son. So, divorce papers were finalized, and I get a phone call from my mom, and she was crying because she was so upset at the thought of losing my son. They had built a life for him. He had friends, he had school, and she was so upset that she thought it all was about to end. So I took that time to pray about it and really think about what was best for my son, not necessarily what was best for me, because this whole time all I kept thinking about was how excited I was and how bad I wanted him to be with me. I wasn't thinking about ripping him out of his school or ripping him away from his friends. So I prayed about it, and I knew what God was telling me, and I knew that it was a decision that I needed to make, that the life my parents were providing for him and had provided for him was the life that he needed. So after praying about it, we took it to court, and I let my parents adopt him. That is probably the happiest I have ever seen my parents. Corey was happy, I was happy, and I knew I had made the right decision, because the life that they provide for him is absolutely amazing. Like, he has everything that any boy could ever want. He has an in-ground pool, he has tons of friends, he gets to play football and do all the things with my dad, and my dad is an amazing role model for him. My dad is an awesome man for him to look after as far as an example on how to be a man. Now, is everyone going to agree with the decision I made? No. And that's okay, because it's my decision. Does it change the way I love my son? No, it doesn't. I love my son more than anything in this world. I love him just like I love my daughter. Our living conditions are just different. We go see him all the time, and he knows I love him. Like, he'll call me up if he's having a bad day. He calls me up when something good happens. And yes, my son has questions. Yes, I'll answer them to the best of my ability. When it comes to him, I love him. I don't love him any different than my daughter. He is everything to me. He will always be everything to me. And this is just our life now. This is how it is. That's a get ready with me and why my son lives with my parents. So I hope everybody has a wonderful day. Be blessed, be sweet, and I'll see you later.